Hello friends, welcome to my channel, a channel for learning simple coding. If you find this video to be helpful, please like, share and subscribe my channel. In last video we have learned what is middleware, how to redirect page in middleware and what is the use of matcher in middleware. Now in this video we are going to learn how we can fetch data at client side in Next.js. You know that Next.js render data at client side and server side. So what is the difference between these rendering client side and server side, that we are going to learn. That's why I have a question, what is client side rendering? And here we will display data from REST API using client side rendering in Next.js. So the concept is fetch data at client side. How to do this and what is client side rendering, that we are going to learn. So first of all, I open MS Paint. I try to explain you what is the meaning of that. Suppose that we have this client machine. So I say this is client, and here we have a server. So I say it's a server. What is the meaning of client and server? Remember that. Meaning here means it's a browser that opening your website, and it is a web server that running your website. Remember? So it's a browser, client is a browser and web server is a server. Web server means we are hosting a website here. So this is a hosting server, anything, and it's a client machine, client laptop, you can say. Now, so from here, client make a request. For example, client make a request to the page. Here I say that is, for example, we have HTTP here, then we have localhost, then we have a port number, for example, then we have, suppose here I say fetch data. This is the URL, for example, client making request to this, to the client, like that. Now again the server is responding to this, remember? So it is a request, it is the response, remember? So when client make a request with this URL, if this URL is compiled at server, suppose if request URL compiled at web server machine, remember, if request URL compiled at web server machine is called server side rendering, remember, because URL is coming here and server is compiling a data at this machine, then response is coming in form of HTML or JavaScript or CSS coming response here, but all the compilation process is doing on server machine, is called server side rendering. But if the URL which you are fetching, server is giving a request, but the code of JavaScript execute at client machine, at client browser, that is called client side rendering. Remember, means request, user make a request, web server open the page, that page come to browser, and after coming at the browser machine in a client machine, then browser compile that code by using JavaScript and give the result, is called client side rendering. Remember this, it's the most important part. And Next.js work on both. Some component in Next.js render or compiled at server machine, and some component is compiled at client machine. If component is compiled at client machine is called client side rendering. If component is compiled at server machine is called server side rendering. And now one more thing, remember, all the React components is called client side rendering, and all the native component of Next.js is called server side rendering. Remember this, most important part. Now the question which I have given in this PPT, what is client side rendering, means the URL data that comes in a client machine and client machine browser with the help of JavaScript compiler, it compiled and execute in the browser of client itself, is called client side rendering. All the React components work there, and native components of Next.js work at server side, means the server which hosting a website, that server compiled that code with the help of JavaScript like Node.js compiled and display information directly to the client. Now how to display data from REST API using client-side rendering, that we are going to learn now. So I create a URL. Suppose under the web itself, I create a directory. This is a root group. Under this, I create a directory or a route. I say client side. Okay. So client side is example or route example, and here I create a page .js or JSX, whatever you want, and I say RAFCE. So this component is I want to execute. By default, this component will execute at server side. Remember, so I will execute at client side. I want all the data which is I'm going to write here, that should compile at client side. So we have to specify here to the next.js that we are going to execute it at a client side. I tell you how to do this. Just I want to use some hooks from React, because when I use React hooks here in this page, then it will display the error message. So for that, I say here h2, I say client side rendering example. Okay, then I say h3, I say fetching user information, like this. Now I create here a use state, so I say const, and I create use state, so I say users set user, and I say use state, like this, and I save this. It must to use this. Then because in React application, data update only when it comes in use state format. Now I say use effect here for fetching a data, and for use effect we have to pass arrow function, you know that, and we have to make blank square here for executing once only. And here I say const data, and I use fetch here. Under the fetch I need to pass the library. So I have a library, so I copy this library. It's URL from GitHub that have the data, and because it's you can say promise based library, so I say async here, and I use await here, like this, and then I put data. So here I say first of all users, then I say data I have to pass to the set user, so I say set user, and I say users, but first of all I have to get data, so I say const data equal to await, and I say users.json. This is also promise based library, and here I need to pass data. For example, remember data is coming. So if I use this API, and you will see the output of this API here, we have an array and we have information like this. So we are going to read this information is coming in data, this is coming in user now. So here I am going to use user. So I say here user.map, remember user.map, and I say under this user.map we have a function, arrow function, and here I want to display information. So here I say one user will come at a time. Under this I display information, so I create table and rows inside this. So here I create table, for example, under this table here, and I pass here tr first. Under tr I pass first of all td, and under this I pass user dot I have to fetch information, that is login is a username and image which we have in avatar URL. So I display image also, so I say login as a username, and after that under td I say image img src, and here I say under this user dot avatar dot url, like this, avatar dot url, this is avatar underscore url. So that avatar underscore url that I want to give here. Then I say alt alternate, I say pick not found, and I close this image URL. Remember this that I want to display now. And if I run this page, this is client side, remember. So for client side, if I go to this URL here and I merge one link here, So for that I go to navigation page, navigation here, and in this navigation, in place of modal or p routes, I change it to, I say client side rendering, client side I write only, and I put here slash client side. Save this, and if I go there, I click on client side, I click here in client side, you will see I click here, we have an error that this page cannot be run at server side. Why? Because it's a React component, and React component cannot be used like a server component. So what we have to do here, I have to specify use client, means I have to give instruction to the next.js that you execute this component on client side, means this page will open at the browser of client machine, and client side JavaScript compiler will execute this code and will display information. It's a React part. So now we go there and request it. So you see it reading a problem is in a map function, why? Because here I have to specify its array like this, then we have to refresh and it trying to render, you see information is coming, so I have to specify width and height also. So I say here, so we have a table, so I say table border equal to 1, remember it's a 1 pixel, just example, I'm not using anything here, otherwise I can use bootstrap also, but I'm not using here bootstrap. So I'm just giving example to show you how client side rendering work, and here we say width of this image is 200 pixel and height of this image is also 200 pixel. Save this, and it will refresh, and you will see once again this way, and I can put it to the you can say I can reduce the size to 100 is okay, and I can give some margin also. So for that I use class name and I say M3 or 4, I'm using bootstrap, and you see, so data is coming, you see data is coming at client side. Don't go for the formatting, we can use bootstrap table also, under that bootstrap table we can put this information and we can design anything, but my concentration is not on displaying a data. Displaying data is a different concept and using a concept is different. So we are using here the concept of client side rendering. Remember that this component, because we specify here use client, so next.js will pass this component to the browser of a client, and there it will execute and fetch data, remember. And if you see that if I refresh it, so it taking a time, you see it taking a time because browser executing this code and displaying a data. For example, I click here on home, so you see we have a root page, then if I click on client side, remember that if I click on client side we have a data at the client side rendering. For that we have to specify here use client. Now how to use server side rendering I will explain in next video, and there I would not use state and use effect because these are part of React JS, and React JS component cannot be used, any kind of hook cannot be used on server side rendering. So how to use that we will see in next video. If you like it, please do subscribe. Thank you for watching this video.